So the story begins in the quiet, tight-knit community of Brooklyn, Iowa, a small town of about 1,500 people nestled in the heart of agricultural Poweshiek County. It was July of 2018, a typical Midwestern summer where the days were long, the air was thick with humidity, and the corn in the surrounding fields grew tall and dense, creating a green wall along every rural road. Life here moved at a predictable, familiar pace. Into this placid setting came Molly Tibbetts, a 20-year-old University of Iowa student who was home for the summer. She was more than just a visitor. She was a part of the community's fabric. Having moved to Iowa from California as a child, she had grown up here. She was the reliable babysitter for local families, a former cross-country runner for the Brooklyn Guernsey Malcolm High School, and a young woman known for her bright, positive demeanor. That summer, she was working at a children's day camp at the Grinnell Regional Medical Center, a job that aligned perfectly with her college studies in psychology and her dream of building a career helping children. Her life was one of promise and connection, deeply rooted in the very town where she would disappear from. On the surface, the evening of Wednesday, July 18th was no different from any other. The sun was beginning to lower, casting a golden light over the town. Molly was staying at her boyfriend Dalton Jack's house on the outskirts of town, having agreed to dog sit while he was away for a construction job in Dubuque, over a 2-hour drive to the northeast. She had gone about her normal day. Nothing suggested that this routine evening would be the last point of normalcy. Not just for her, but for everyone who knew her. The town of Brooklyn, for all its quiet charm, was about to become the epicenter of a mystery that would grip the nation. A mystery that started with a simple, healthy act that should have been entirely safe. On that Wednesday evening, July 18th, Molly Tibbetts prepared for her run. She was a creature of habit, and this was her typical time to exercise, well before dark. She headed east from Dalton Jack's house, which sat precisely where the paved roads of Brooklyn gave way to the gravel of rural Poweshiek County. Her planned route was familiar, a loop that would take her through quiet residential streets and past the edges of farmland. At some point during her evening, she sent a Snapchat message to Dalton. The photo showed she was inside the house, though the precise time she sent it remains unclear. Dalton, exhausted from a 12-hour workday in Dubuque, would not open the Snapchat until later that night around 10 p.m. He began to type a reply, but fell asleep with his phone in his hand, the message unsent. This digital ping, that single-opened Snapchat, would become a tiny, crucial data point in the timeline. It was the last known activity from Molly that suggested normalcy. The following morning, Thursday, July 19th, the silence began. Dalton texted her a good morning message around 7 a.m., but there was no reply. By noon, concerned, he sent another text. Again, nothing. His concern, however, was still tempered by the rhythms of a young adult summer. Perhaps she was busy. The definitive alarm bell rang when his phone rang. It was a co-worker from the children's day camp where Molly worked. Molly had not shown up for her shift. She had not called in sick. This was the fracture point. For a responsible, dedicated young woman like Molly, this was utterly out of character. It was the signal that propelled Dalton and his brother to immediately leave their worksite in Dubuque and begin the 2.5-hour drive back to Brooklyn. As he drove, Dalton started making calls. To Molly's parents, Rob Tibbetts and Laura Calderwood, to her friends, to anyone who might have heard from her, but no one had. By the time he arrived back in Brooklyn, the worry had solidified into dread. Together with her family, Dalton contacted the Poweshiek County Sheriff's Office. On Thursday, July 19th, 2018, Molly Tibbetts was officially reported missing.
Right? So Molly disappears. And it's crazy. The word gets out in the whole town. Poweshiek County gets on board. The FBI gets there. It's a life-turning situation, right? And everybody is all, dude, let's help. Let's get out there. Let's find her. We know who she is. Let's get down and do the work. Now, they search through these gigantic cornfields, which are totally massively difficult to search through, right? Like you're going through them shoulder to shoulder and you're right next to her, and you would never know that you're so close to her at the same time because it's so dense with the corn, right? There's aerial searches with drones and airplanes, all of this stuff that was happening in the beginning. Literally zero information whatsoever. They searched all of the local businesses, all of the local homes. There were multiple security cameras that they were searching through, and then they went and searched all of the farmsteads, which was also crazy because it's a small town and people know each other. So it was a big feeling to be like, hey, we have to do this to every single person, but we need to get to the bottom of this. Now, what happens is Molly was connected to technology, social media, and she was a big fan of a Fitbit that she used. So what they do is they start looking into this digital world. She had a internet blackout. Okay, so there was no digital footprint on her bank account, anything, which was crucial. Her Fitbit data stopped. Her social media, all of her bank accounts, whole thing dead. So it proved that all of that was going on, and they knew that something ominous happened to her because all of this information stopped, right? And the original hope that the community had for finding her quickly started to strain as the days went on, and everything that happened was absolutely crazy. And the whole town of Brooklyn was surrounded by missing posters with Molly's face on them, and everyone was just waiting for the answer, but it didn't come. Now, for nearly a month, the investigation was going forward, and it was crazy, but there was no clear direction. And then it got down to something crucial. A young man named Logan Collins, who lived with his family on 616 Des Moines Street in Brooklyn, contacted authorities. His home was equipped with multiple security cameras that captured views of the surrounding streets and properties. Right now, Logan didn't know Molly personally, but he recognized her as someone who occasionally jogged past his house. He provided investigators with his system's hard drive. Scrutinizing the footage from July 18th, analysts found a crucial sequence. At 7:45 p.m., time-stamped on the video, a figure believed to be Molly Tibbetts was captured jogging on Boundary Street, where it intersects with East Des Moines Street. The footage was grainy, but the likeness was strong. 28 seconds after the jogger passed, a specific vehicle entered the same frame, a black Chevrolet Malibu with distinctive chrome mirror covers, chrome door handles, and shiny chrome rims. This was not just a passing car. Reviewing footage from other cameras on the Collins property, investigators saw this same black Malibu again and again. It appeared on a camera facing northeast at 7:47 p.m. Just 2 minutes later, it passed once more at 8:07 p.m., this time moving at a higher rate of speed, heading east on Des Moines Street. In total, the vehicle was captured 6 separate times in the vicinity over a span of about 25 minutes, long after the jogger had moved through that area. Right? Investigators worked to identify every vehicle seen on the tapes. They located the drivers of other cars who were all local residents able to explain their ordinary movements that evening. The black Malibu was the only anomaly, the only vehicle whose repeated, lingering presence could not be immediately explained or whose driver didn't come forward. Right? The investigation now had a tangible focus. The video did not show a license plate or a clear image of the person behind the wheel, but it provided something vital, a thread to pull. The search parameters narrowed from thousands of acres of farmland to finding one black sedan in the state of Iowa. The car and the unknown person driving it became the single most important clue in understanding what happened after Molly Tibbetts turned on to that quiet street on her evening run.
On August 15th, Poweshiek County Sheriff's Deputy Steve Keevy was deeply immersed in reviewing the surveillance lead. The very next day, August 16th, while on duty, Deputy Keevy saw a vehicle matching the description, a black Chevy Malibu with chrome accents, entering Interstate 80 near Brooklyn. He followed the car and initiated a traffic stop. When he approached the driver, he found a calm, polite young man who spoke limited English. The driver identified himself as Christian Bahena Rivera, age 24.
By chance, an older gentleman who spoke Spanish was nearby and assisted with translation. Deputy Keevy asked Rivera if he knew about the missing girl, Molly Tibbetts. Rivera said he had heard about it but denied any involvement. He provided his Mexican birth certificate as identification and told the officer he lived and worked at Yerraby Farms, a large dairy operation owned by the family of prominent Iowa Republican Craig Lang. Deputy Keevy took a photograph of Rivera and his vehicle. He peered inside the car but did not conduct a search. At that moment, Rivera was not arrested. He was allowed to go. This interaction, however, placed him firmly on the investigative radar. For 4 days, authorities built their case and gathered more information. Then, on Monday, August 20th, Deputy Keevy and other investigators went to Yerraby Farms to speak with Rivera again. This time, they asked him to come to the sheriff's office for a formal interview. He agreed and was taken into custody. The interview that followed lasted approximately 12 hours, stretching late into the night and early morning of August 21st. During this marathon interrogation, investigators questioned Rivera about his movements on July 18th. He confirmed the black Malibu in the video was his. He explained his evening by saying he was driving around Brooklyn trying to find his uncle's house to pick up a vacuum cleaner. He admitted to seeing Molly Tibbetts jogging, stating he passed her 3 times. He told investigators he found her hot. His account then took a dark turn. He stated that at one point he got out of his car and ran alongside her. He claimed she grabbed her phone and threatened to call the police. Rivera said they began to fight and she slapped him. He alleged that this threat made him so angry he blacked out, a phenomenon he claimed happened to him when he was very upset. His next memory, he said, was waking up in his car parked at a rural intersection. He said then he noticed one of Molly's earbuds in his lap and upon checking, discovered her body with blood on her head in the trunk of his car. Following his statement in the early hours of August 21st, Christine Bahena Rivera led investigators from the sheriff's office to a remote location. It was a cornfield on 385th Avenue, a secluded area southeast of Brooklyn. The scene was lit by the headlights of police vehicles and the first hint of dawn. There, under a covering of corn stalks deliberately placed to obscure the view, authorities found the body of Molly Tibbetts. Only her running shoes were initially visible. When the stalks were carefully removed, they discovered she was wearing only a black sports bra and socks. Her black running shorts, her underwear, and a pink headband were found over 30 feet away, deeper into the corn rows. The position and state of her clothing would prompt questions, but an autopsy would later find no definitive evidence of sexual assault. The autopsy instead revealed the violent cause of death. Molly had suffered 7 to 12 sharp force injuries, stab wounds, to her chest, ribs, neck, and skull. The murder weapon was never found. With the discovery of the body, Rivera was formally placed under arrest for first-degree murder. Investigators then processed his 2 vehicles, the black Chevy Malibu and a Nissan Altima he also owned. The forensic examination of the Malibu's trunk proved crucial. Crime scene technicians located what appeared to be bloodstains on several items within the trunk, including a football and a fishing pole. More importantly, they found blood on the rubber seal above the license plate and on the carpeted interior walls of the trunk itself. This evidence was collected and sent for DNA analysis. The results provided the powerful physical link between Rivera's car and the crime. The blood was matched to Molly Tibbetts. This forensic evidence, combined with the surveillance video placing his car at the scene repeatedly and his own confession about the body being in the trunk, formed the core of the prosecution's case. The investigation, which had spanned 34 days of searching and uncertainty, had now pivoted completely. The mystery of Molly's disappearance was solved in the most tragic way possible, and the focus shifted to building an airtight legal case against the man who had just led them to her remains in the cold, quiet light of an Iowa morning.
Kristen Bahena Rivera's trial began in late May of 2021, nearly 3 years after Molly's death. The prosecution presented a straightforward, evidence-based narrative. The surveillance video, the DNA from Molly's blood in Rivera's trunk, and his own detailed confession to investigators. However, in a dramatic turn, Rivera took the stand in his own defense and presented a completely new story. He recanted his entire confession. He testified that on the evening of July 18th, after his shift at the dairy farm, 2 armed and masked men had come to his trailer. They forced him into his Malibu at gunpoint, ordered him to drive, and directed him through the Brooklyn area. He claimed that when they saw Molly Tibbetts jogging, one of the men, armed with a knife, got out of the car. This man was gone for about 10 minutes before returning. Rivera stated the 2 men then put something heavy into the trunk, ordered him to drive to the remote cornfield, and told him to wait before leaving. He said he only discovered it was Molly's body after they had fled on foot, threatening to harm his ex-girlfriend and young daughter if he ever spoke of them. He claimed he moved the body into the cornfield and covered it out of a confused sense of decency, and that he lied to police for 12 hours out of fear for his family's safety. The defense argued this new account was the truth and painted Rivera as a pawn, a scared immigrant coerced by sinister, unknown individuals. They also highlighted the lengthy interrogation, showing the jury video of Rivera sleeping during the marathon session, suggesting his initial confession was unreliable, a product of exhaustion and pressure. The prosecution dismantled this news story. They emphasized that Rivera had never mentioned these two men during his initial detailed confession and only invented them years later at trial. They argued his original account of blacking out in anger aligned with the physical evidence they had. They pointed out that his story of mysterious assailants left no trace, no forensic evidence, no witnesses, no motive, while the evidence against Rivera was concrete and overwhelming. The jury was left to weigh a fantastical tale of shadowy kidnappers against the hard facts of video, DNA, and a man's own prior words. After 7 days of testimony, they deliberated for just over 7 hours across 2 days. On May 28, 2021, they returned a unanimous verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. On August 30, 2021, Kristen Bahana Rivera was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When given the chance to speak, he simply said, "No thank you." The final words in the courtroom belonged to Molly Tibbetts' family and the judge. Molly's mother, Laura Calderwood, delivered a victim impact statement that laid bare the permanent void left by her daughter's murder. She spoke directly to Rivera, telling him, "Molly was a young woman who simply wanted to go for a quiet run on the evening of July 18th, and you chose to violently and sadistically end that life." Beyond the courtroom, Molly's death ignited painful, parallel national conversations. Her murder became a flashpoint in the nation's immigration debate, with political figures using her case to call for stricter policies. Molly's own family forcefully rejected this politicization. Her father, Rob Tibbetts, wrote that the killer was no more a reflection of the Hispanic community than white supremacists are of all white people, pleading that his daughter not be used as a pawn. He urged for building bridges, not walls. Molly's tragedy also fueled a lasting dialogue about the dangers women face in public spaces. The common reflexive question, "Why was she running alone?" was challenged by advocates who argued the focus must shift to why women are harassed and targeted. In response, the #MilesForMolly movement emerged, with runners nationwide dedicating their miles to her memory, symbolizing resilience and a refusal to be driven indoors by fear. The story of Molly Tibbetts is not just a true crime case resolved. It is a story of a promising life ended, a community's heartbreak, a family's unwavering love, and the complex, often difficult conversations about safety, justice, and humanity that arose from a single, violent act on a quiet country road. That is all we have for today. If this story touched you in any way, please do well to give it a like. Thank you for your time. I will be seeing you on our next episode.